This is episode number 37 of DevOps Paradox with Darren Pope and Victor Farsick. I am Darren.
And I'm Victor.
And today we're going to talk about deployments. It could be old school Big Bang, or we could try to do new kid cool stuff. Right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about the continuum of what we believe. The basics. I mean, there's obviously going to be variations of every one of these. But we think it rolls up into four big ones, right?
Exactly. Big Bang, rolling deployments, blue-green, and Canary deployments. I guess that those are the three you were referring to.
Yeah, the four. Yeah, that's it.
And you previously said kind of like choosing the right deployment. I don't think that it's a choice. It's mostly forced on you. You can do one or the other depending on the way how you assembled your applications. So it doesn't scale.
Well, it's not so much a symbol, it's how it was written.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as architecture of your application and the system in general.
So Big Bang, that's sort of where everybody starts. Right?
I mean, I wouldn't say that everybody starts, but everybody was starting in the past, let's say.
Yes. Yeah. This is the history of deployments, if you will.
Exactly. So we long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, we were all doing Big Bang because most of us had a single replica of our application. A big one, the one that you were scaling by adding more CPU and memory to the problem. And that application had to be shut down for a new application to be put in its place. And we're going to call that Big Bang, even though probably there is a better name for that. And that's inevitable downtime. There is absolutely no way to avoid downtime if you don't have multiple replicas of your application. And then we got to the idea to do blue-green deployments, which would be running two Big Bangs in parallel, old and a new one, and redirecting traffic to one or the other, which already means that you need to have application that scales, because you already have at least two replicas of your application running. The problem with that is that with blue-green, you have to have everything double. So if you have 100 servers, you would need to have 200 servers in production, which is a very costly operation. Assuming that you really want to really do Big Bang in terms that you can roll back any time of the day. And then we got rolling updates, which would upgrade one replica at a time. So if you have 10 replicas, you would have, 9 replicas of the old release, 1 replica of the new release, and then 8 replicas of the old release, 2 replicas of the new release, and so on and so forth. And for that, you definitely need to have a scalable application. Simply, it's impossible. And I'm going really fast here, then we have Canary deployments, which would be the same as rolling updates, but you're making a decision whether to proceed or no. 10% of the traffic here, 90% there. Make a decision, go forward, go back. And that decision is made, hopefully, by machines running some tests in production. And tests in production means that we are evaluating metrics. Is the error rate sufficiently low? Is the speed of responses of our application sufficiently high? And so on and so forth. And I would say that probably there is... Canary, that will change, everything changes. But today, Canary deployments are the pinnacle of deployment strategies. I don't think that there is anything more sophisticated or more reliable than Canary deployments.
Okay, well, great. That was a quick
Actually,
episode.
I do. If you combine Canary deployments with feature toggles or feature switches, then you get something even more complex and more sophisticated.
So, in doing that, and so you basically just gave the full history over the past 20 years of deployments, maybe longer.
Give or take, yes.
Give or take.
There are some shades of gray in between and all those things, but yes.
So, if today you're Big Bang or Blue Green, one or the other, maybe you made it far enough in your application re-architecture to get to Blue Green, to where that was a safe deployment or a non-blow-up deployment. How do you get to Canary from there? Because it's probably going to have to still continue to be an application re-arch as you move through.
I mean, it really depends on how you're doing blue-green. For example, you can say that I'm doing blue-green simply for the sake of rolling back fast and in an easy way when a human detects a problem. Then you're kind of far away from Canary or whatever else you might be doing. But if you're using blue-green combined with some evaluating some metrics, and in other words, if you're rolling back automatically or semi-automatically, then you're probably in a fairly good shape to go to Canary deployments. It all depends on kind of, do you collect metrics? And bear in mind that this is the easiest part. Collecting anything is easy. But do you trust those metrics, and do you trust the formulas or queries sufficiently that you can say, okay, whenever the result is X or higher than X or lower than Y or whatever the criteria is, then actually I'm going to roll back. That would be kind of, if you can get there, if you can have that trust in a system, and if your application is scalable and all those nice things that we know about applications, then it's all about understanding the process, understanding the tools around the process, and just doing it. It's not really a big deal if you can trust metrics and if your application is ready.
But you could apply metrics to any of the four. You could.
Oh yeah, of course.
And you should.
Of course. I mean, you exactly. I mean, if you don't have metrics, but I always say the same thing, and then I always get surprised over and over again how much people actually, they have metrics, but they don't really use it. It's still mostly watching at some dashboards and then wondering what's happening and things like that. But yes, you can apply metrics. Metrics are universal. Doesn't matter how you deploy things.
Is that really the first part of the re-architecture? If you're still Big Bang today, is that the first thing you should do, is collect metrics and analyze?
Yes, collect metrics and analyze. And here comes the difficult part. It's not only about, the easy part is to collect metrics of the system. A bit harder part is to collect metrics from inside your application. That's a bit tougher because, for example, you cannot, doesn't matter how you deploy stuff, right? You want to make a decision to do something based on metrics. And now, the latency of your requests is not good enough. You need to be able to say, okay, latency of this function, of this endpoint, of this part of my application needs to be this, and now that part needs to be that. So it cannot be, it's not good enough to say, is my application fast? Because that will give you some averages that are not really useful. Because, I don't know, like response of sign up process might be slower than what you expect from the rest of your application. And if you take all that together, then you're going to have really high thresholds that apply only to part of your application.
So how would you do cross-cutting? Because people don't want to go in and instrument everything.
But they should, I think.
But that introduces risk in the application too, right? Done incorrectly, bad metric collection could be worse than user impacting performance.
Yes. Yes, but that's why you have those more general metrics usually collected from outside of your application that are going to tell you whether your application slowed is in general, kind of as a whole, right? So if you instrument your application with metrics and the other external metrics are telling you this is slow, then you know it's slow. You know that you did something wrong. So the first step is definitely collect general metrics. And then you can start instrumenting. You will know whether it's too slow for you.
And you called out one thing that I thought was interesting, the sign-up process. Don't necessarily just instrument for technical, but instrument for business reasons.
Of course. Because you need to know, are people giving up? I mean, just to keep with the latency example from before, if you would now say, Victor, there is a problem in our application, it's too slow, I would tell you to bug off. Kind of, what value it is to me to know that application is slow? No value. It provides absolutely no tangible value. I need to know which part of the application is slow. Right? That would be the same as saying, if you being QA and saying, opening an issue saying application doesn't work. Yes, what doesn't work? It's a huge application. Tell me what's not working. Same thing with metrics. If you don't know what is wrong, if you can just say, the cluster is not sufficiently fast, that's silly.
Yeah, but that's where most people end up going to first. I need bigger, faster, and they're solving the problems, the quote-unquote problems, by throwing hardware at it. And sometimes that's right. Sometimes that's right. Well, because they started with an undersized thing to begin with. Right? Because it's greenfield deployment. Hey, this is the first time we're doing this. We don't know what we're doing, so this is what we think.
Yes.
And you could load test. Yeah, but you could load test that every way to Sunday, but until you get real human/bot traffic running against it, there's no way to tell.
Exactly. But I think that the bigger problem is that it's, and I think that we've been repeating this over and over again in this podcast, is that there's that disconnect between different groups. Because if you have some operations group or sysadmins group that is in charge of those metrics, of course that they're going to look at the system from a very high level perspective, because they have no idea that you have different functions and endpoints and different stuff in your application. How could they know? And you assume that they are going to do all that work, you as a developer. So there is that discrepancy that it's not my job, and the person whose job that is cannot go that low because he only knows that there is a application.
Yeah, and this calls out the still huge divide between dev and ops.
Exactly. Not working in a team.
Not working in a team. We all want to play in it. Well, I say we all want to play in a team. I don't believe that's true, but that's another conversation that we don't need to derail ourselves with. The short of it, without derailing too far, is every little part of the company is building their own little kingdom.
Exactly.
And that's all I mean by that. It's not individuals not wanting to work as a team, but it's the teams not wanting to work with teams.
I would say that basically, I mean, I don't even necessarily have anything against each team playing separately with being company within a company and all those things. That's not the real issue. That's almost unavoidable. What is the real issue is how you organize those teams. So are they teams around technology, like, I don't know, middle layer team, whatever that would mean? Or is it a team around the product?
Right. Is it following line of business or is it following technology?
Exactly. If it follows lines of business, kind of, I'm a team in charge of this product, Gmail, right? Then yes, you can be as selfish and you can be as separate from others as you want because you are a business. The problem is that QA is not a business. There is no business motivation behind having QA or operations or all those things in most companies. No matter how much we want it, there is nobody ever says my business will be to have QA in a company. My business will be to release this application. That's business.
Yeah. Okay.
And
let's park that one. Yeah, we're already somewhere else, but that's okay. We can come back. We'll come back to that another day. But with deployments, Big Bang, Blue Green, Rolling, Canary. Right? Those are the sort of the big 4 buckets. You have to instrument your app in order to collect metrics. But then what do you do? I mean, okay, we can pump metrics to fill in the blank. What's today's hotness for filling in that blank? Is it Prometheus Grafana? It could be anything, right? It doesn't really matter.
Doesn't really matter actually it does matter. It does matter in terms of what today's application assumes to be a standard. And if we are talking about relatively new stuff, usually running in Kubernetes, then everybody assumes Prometheus. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, it does matter. It's not a question whether Prometheus is better or worse, but you're going to pick a tool X that will do a job Y, whatever that is, right? And that tool is likely to assume, if it assumes only one metrics storage backend, it will be Prometheus. So you're going to choose Istio. Istio works natively with Prometheus. You're going to choose Slugger, again Prometheus. You're going to choose this, you're going to choose that. It's Prometheus, Prometheus, Prometheus. And in this case, we can have a separate session. I'm not entering now whether Prometheus is a better or worse choice from technical perspective, but it is assumed. So if you don't use it, then actually you will have to discard parts of the things that you will be adopting.
Right.
And that might be a big problem.
Yeah, because if it's sort of decided upon that, oh yeah, this by default, this is what this subtool uses. We'll use Istio for a second. By default, Istio pumps data to Prometheus, or vice versa, I guess. Whatever.
Vice versa, yes.
Said it backwards. But what if you're not in Kubernetes yet?
If you're not in Kubernetes, then it's almost anything. I think that there is no that established standard.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got money, you can use Splunk, right? You could. I mean, that's an answer, or you could write your own time series database. Because the key part of all this is time series. Well, no, let me rephrase that. Not write your own time series, but use a time series database to do, because that's the key part to the metrics, is time is everything.
Yes, at least but now if you look at the landscape of similar tools, you will notice that most of them are not really time series. A good example would be Elastic, right? It's a very popular tool to store not only logs, but metrics, and it is not time series. And it is very inefficient in that. And I would not recommend it because of that, but I cannot say that time series is still the most common option. Splunk, I think, is also not time series. It actually swallows everything.
It's Elkish under the hood. So it's...
Yeah. But if I'm hosting it myself, let's say Elk, then I do care a lot because of the performance and maintenance and all those things. But now if I use some service like Datadog or whatever you're using, then I don't really care whether they're time series behind the scenes or no, because I'm not maintaining it. As long as the price is right, I don't really care. It's their problem.
Right. And as long as I can get data into it fast enough to be able to query it fast enough to make decisions, that's what I care about. Yes.
However, what I'm seeing more and more, and when I say more and more with Greenfield, usually, because enterprises are slow in adopting anything, is that people are, even if they're using something else, they're still putting Prometheus because of that connection with other stuff. Yeah. I know that we are, for example, using Stackdriver in Google, but we're still going through Prometheus simply because of that connection.
Right. So let's pretend that I'm a developer. Well, I am a developer, but a day-to-day developer. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm a developer, and the mandate has come down from management saying, hey, we can't do these big bang all weekend releases anymore. We've got to get to where we're deploying when things are ready to go out. Not necessarily continuous deployment, but just when things are ready to go, even though that infers continuous deployment. I'm on Kubernetes. I'm new to Kubernetes, but I'm comfortable enough with it. I've been working with it for about 9 months. I've got my first app out there. I sort of understand rolling updates because that's the default out of the box with Kubernetes. But now I want to get to Canary because I've had, even with my rolling, the rolling goes out and I've had to roll back before because it's just a pain in the butt. And this, I don't understand how to do this. What options do I have to really learn how to do this correctly?
Go to the course that we released a few days ago. Actually, by the time you listen to this, it will be a month ago or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, weeks. Udemy course.
There's a Udemy course.
Yes, there is. And we can put
we'll put the link down
discount code. That, I think 13 something. I'm not sure.
Whatever
discount Udemy gives us, yes.
Yeah, it's. I mean, yes, it's a course. Yes, we're talking about it, but it's not super expensive.
So here's the decision that was the thought process behind the decision how expensive it will be. We put the cheapest price that Udemy allows.
Yep, that's it.
It cannot be cheaper than that because Udemy has fixed prices.
Well, bands of prices, but yes. And it was that simple, right? So I worked with Victor on it, not as much as I should, but it's an amazing course, if I do say so myself, because it takes you from soup to nuts, from how to take an application, assuming that it's architected correctly, that it's compliant, for lack of a better term, all the way to the point to where you can do Canary deployments the right way. And right way meaning right way as of early 2020. Because I can guarantee you this is going to change over time. Maybe not fast, but the concepts, there will be new things that get introduced into Kubernetes that make Canary easier.
So here's the thing about that course is that if you're just interested in making it work, then you can just skip straight to the last or second to last section and get over with it. The course really tries to teach you what's happening behind the scenes, so that when things go south, and they will, you understand what's really going on and how to fix it and all those things. So if you're looking for some quick fix, then maybe it's too expensive for you because you could actually do it in 1 hour, but it really explains what's behind all of that.
Yeah, you could. The interesting thing to this is Victor did, again, most of it. I'm not going to say that I did most of it and he only did a little bit because that would be a huge lie. But in applying this, because I've been through and I've actually taught courses from Victor's books before, he followed that same process. So if you've been through any of Victor's books before, it's little by little. So by the time you end up at the end, it's like, oh, now I understand how it is all interconnected and why those things are doing those things. That same process is applied. And watching Victor, now it isn't just, there are 0 slides. So if you're a little concerned about that, there are 0 slides. It takes us about 4 to 5 videos in before you're actually doing real stuff. There's a big setup at the front, sort of summaries and stuff right up front. There are 74 videos. Don't let that scare you. Most of them are short.
Right. Yes.
In that,
probably like 4 or 5 minutes on average.
Yeah. So it's easy enough to do. If you're taking a break at lunch, you could squeeze through a couple of the videos during lunch. It's doable. You will need a Kubernetes cluster to do the things, but that doesn't mean you need full blown. You even got it to the point to where it works on Docker Desktop or Minikube.
Yes. So there are instructions how to set it up in Docker
Desktop,
Minikube, and other places.
Yeah. So down in the show notes, there will be a link off to the course with the best discount we can give you. At the time, Udemy also maintains how they do discounting, so we'll include that link there. So just if you're either listening on the site or whatnot, just look for that link off to. It may be a udemy.com or it may be a bit.ly link. I don't know which it'll be, but it'll be something that's clear of what it is. It'll say, what is the name of the course, by the way? I've already forgotten.
Me too. We need to check something.
Something about Canary deployment.
Canary and then Istio and Kubernetes is there.
Yep. And then just put Victor in there too. But anyway, the link will be there. But we'll put the full name to the course as well, right above that link in the notes.
I found it. Canary deployments to Kubernetes using Istio and Friends.
Istio and Friends. It sounds like a TV morning show. But anyway. So now you might be saying, okay, why is this course coming out and not the other course to where we're comparing the 4 or however many we said, which Kubernetes service provider sucks the least? Well, I'm still not done yet. And honestly, the Canary was more interesting than comparing the 4. Right? I mean, let's be real. It was more interesting than comparing the 4.
But I guess depends on the audience.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. It was more interesting to you. And I haven't had time to finish up my part of the other one yet. So that's what that is. So, course. Not the course you're expecting. But if you want to understand Canary deployments, and again, these are sort of, they're not even what I would call primers on Istio or the other bits and pieces here. It's just, here's how you would use them. So don't consider this to be a comprehensive course on Istio, on Kubernetes, on everything else. There's a lot of assumptions there. But Victor goes into a lot of these in clarity. So that pretty much wraps it up for today. Thanks for listening. If you want to contact us, you can contact us, or you can find all of our contact information at devopsparadox.com/contact. Twitter, LinkedIn, all that stuff's over there. Please leave a rating and review. And now we can sort of add it. If you purchase the course, leave a rating and review on the course over there. But more than likely, we need you to please leave a review for the podcast. That will help us out greatly. And that's pretty much it. Canary deployments are a good thing. Manual deployments are a horrible thing. So, if you're still today doing manual deployments, maybe this is going to be a little bit of hope for you today. If you're doing manual deployments, what should be that person's first step?
Open a Word document with instructions, copy and paste, and then change the characters that Word changes, like double quotes, and then run it. But as soon as you convert that Word document into a script that you execute, kind of deploy me.sh, you did most of the work. Most of the work is done. It's that easy.
If you're copying and pasting commands anyway, it needs to turn into a script.
Yeah.
Or sets of scripts. Again, another conversation for another day. All right. Thanks again for listening to episode number 37 of DevOps Paradox.